Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. River of emotions that I didn't even recognize that I had. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Sure.
and you just start looking at everything differently, and it just I don't know how else to explain it. It's just completely different.
Yeah, well, and you can imagine like watching friends struggle, right, with this as we're heading out, to parts unknown for however long it takes. And so that was another factor that really went into my, my decision was, I wanted to be, one of my buddies to actually know his kid and to get to be there pretty much every day of his life. And it ended up having pretty significant ramifications positively, because having made that decision and left a community that I really loved, I think I did a pretty good job at following through and making sure that there was nothing in my kids' lives that I missed. Because that's one of the big reasons why I got out of service. And so it was but it's a great question you ask, because I so loved that life and that community that it was a very hard decision.
And it's different for everybody, right? So all the guys that I've talked to that have been, in the community you were in, they all have a different reason, right? Nobody's reason is the same. And it's, it's interesting because they're all at different times in their lives, and we have different things going on. And, a lot of times what's interesting is a lot of times it has to do with family. A lot of times it's something going on in their family where they just, they need to go focus on this, right?
Yeah, almost everyone, right? Needs to go focus on a marriage if they want to stay married, because that is not a great it's not a great career path for marital longevity.
And when you're doing what you're doing, you almost have to disappear for like 6 months, right? Because you are doing classified stuff and you can't talk about where you are, and you can't, you know what I mean? It's like, that's, it's like being in a bubble, and the people that are in your life are outside that bubble, unfortunately, and it's hard to maintain a relationship when you've got all these sort of restrictions around you.
Yeah, it's a challenge. And I think that, that's something that a lot of guys grapple with and don't really talk about too much, but that, that certainly comes with the territory, right? Of doing that job.
So you make the life-changing decision to leave, then where do you go?
Well, part of that life-changing decision also was that I had decided I would swing for the fences and apply to one business school, right? And that was Stanford. And I kind of said, all right, well, if I get in, then that's a sign from the heavens that it's time for me to, to wrap up my kit bag and head on to my next challenge. And if I don't, all right, well, then I'll stay in and finish a career. And literally that was the, as I rolled the dice, and to my everlasting astonishment, the fat envelope arrived from Stanford instead of the skinny letter. And at that point, I kind of had to, I never expected it, frankly, to happen. It was a little bit of a bargain that I made with my wife at the time, and said, well, we'll if I get in, then I'll get out of the teams and go. And somehow I got in. And it wasn't, I can assure you, it was not because of my stellar academics, but I think it was a bit of the mystique. I think I was the first SEAL to ever go through the program, and there was that certainly helped differentiate me from the herd of luminously bright kids that were all about 10 years my junior. I was also the granddaddy of the Stanford Business School class of 2003, and by about 10 years over the modal age.
Yeah.
So that was all part of what ultimately convinced me, all right, well, this is the chance to go and write a new chapter.
So it's kind of applying was kind of a Hail Mary, you think?
A little bit. Yeah.
How did you feel when you got that fat envelope?
Terrified. Terrified. I was like,
hold on, Mr. Navy SEAL Special Missions. Come on now. Right?
Yeah. No, it was like the dog that chases the school bus down the road.
Nothing terrifies you, man. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, that's not true. Any smart SEAL will tell you there's a lot of things that terrify you. You just figure out how to deal with the terror.
Here we go with that authentic thing again.
Yeah, well, it was like the dog that chases the bus down the road and gets hold of the back bumper.
Now what do I do?
That was kind of me with Stanford Business School. Now what do I do?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah,
I caught it. What do I do?
And boy, I'll tell you what, that first year I paid, because I hadn't had math in 25 years. And I had this sort of, I'd just come from being a squadron commander at this elite unit. And I figured I can bull my way through anything.
Sure.
Whoa, that first year was pushed me to the limits, frankly. And I probably anchored the bottom of the first 20 exams that I took. And you can imagine the psychic trauma that caused, from coming from this very self-congratulatory place to being the bottom of the curve.
Right.
That was a tough couple of years.
Yeah, had to have been. So you get through, you graduate, you have an MBA from Stanford, bachelor's from USC, right? You got all your experience in the SEALs. Now what do you do?
Probably the dumbest thing that I could have possibly done, which was go be a bootstrap entrepreneur, right? I had created in the teams, I had come up with this crazy idea on an operation to, the funny thing about TRX is it was a complete accident.
Yeah.
I had deployed on a counter piracy op weirdly, I had grabbed a flight suit out of my cage as I was putting together all my gear. And underneath the flight suit had been my jiu-jitsu belt, because we trained, we'd go out and train. We had a mat room there. And by accident, I'd stuffed this in my bag, and I ended up on the other side of the world, sitting, waiting for this op to get approved or not. It ended up not getting approved.
Yeah.
And I just had this bizarre moment of kind of inquisitiveness where I will never forget it, sitting on a cot, staring at my jiu-jitsu belt, and there was a bathroom door in this little warehouse. And what I was trying to do was figure out how to essentially do pull-ups in a place where you have no pull-up bars. Right. And I just had this idea to tie the knot in the end of this jiu-jitsu belt and throw it over the door and then go lean back. And what I was trying to do was create the motion of climbing a caving ladder. Right. Get up the side of a freighter.
Yeah.
And I kind of leaned back, let gravity take my body weight, and then I pulled myself up, and then leaned back and pull myself up. And I tried the other side.
How far back did you go?
Well, I don't know, 45 degrees, enough to lift your, like, a meaningful amount of body weight.
Okay.
And then I realized, like, wait a minute, that's pretty cool. Like, what if I moved the knot to the middle and I put it over the door? Now I'd have two ends hanging down, right? All of a sudden I could do rows and I could do curls and then I tried to do a fly.
You could do laps, you could do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but I was too close to the door.
Yeah.
So then I went over and rummaged around in this extra kit box that we traveled with all kinds of, rigger's tape and 550 cord and extra webbing. And I took, 6 feet of that, tied it in the middle, put a knot in the end of it, threw it over the door. And now all of a sudden I had the standoff far enough from the door that I could do flies. And then wait a minute, I turn around and do presses and tricep extensions. And I just started, kind of geeking out on this goofy strap.
How cool.
And then, of course, guys in the squadron do what they do. First, they mock you. Like, what are you doing, princess?
Yeah.
And then 2 minutes later, they're telling you, all right, get out of the way. Let me try this. Hey, couldn't we do this? Couldn't we do that? And that was the beginning of what started as just a little kind of clever solution. Guys used to call it my gizmo. Hey, boss, make one of your gizmos.
Yeah.
And then by the time that I that I left service, there were enough of them bouncing around that unit that I knew, that high performance cats liked this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was at Stanford and I had the opportunity to go out and train in the athlete training center, and I had a whole bunch of the coaches come up to me. And because I would go out there and I'd hook up my straps, here you are in a pretty world-class weight room, right? But I'd go out and hook up my straps and be busting my workouts. And probably a dozen of the coaches over the course of 6 months came up and said to me, like, all right, you got to explain to me what this thing is.
Yeah.
And they, as exercise physiologists or practitioners, immediately looked at it and went, wait a minute, this thing does things that nothing else in this weight room does.
Yeah.
And so they would invariably end up asking me, hey, could you make me 20 of these for my squad?
Yeah.
And I, at the time I wasn't configured to do that, but I said, well, no, but I like the way you're thinking,
Yeah.
And I was at business school thinking about business. And it was about the end of my first year, I started thinking, like, I wonder if there could be a business in this. And so I used the summer between my first and second year, but to my wife's chagrin, I bought an old used sewing machine. While all my classmates were out taking high-paying internships at big firms, I hunkered down in my garage and started working on converting this kind of caveman-like prototype into something that somebody like you might pay for.
Yeah.
And then I used the second year at Stanford as an incubator. And I basically set up my schedule so every class had something to do with this idea that I had. And the commitment to myself was, all right, by the time I get, toward graduation, it's going to be a go, no go moment.
Right.
And I made the decision that, I got one, I remember thinking at the time, I got one failure in me, right? Before I got to get a respectable job. Like I was 36. I thought, all right, I can take, by the time I'm 40, like the question has to be answered. I'm either going to be, an entrepreneur where a business is working, or I will have crashed and burned and I'll go get a real job and, take what I know and my background and my MBA and go do something respectable. Yeah. But I just felt like I had to take a swing at this kind of startup, and remember when that was, it was early 2000s, right? So startups were all the rage, and I decided I was going to be a swashbuckling entrepreneur.
Wow. What a story. So every summer you had high paying internships that you could have done, right? And your wife is watching you with a sewing machine.
Yeah. And, God bless her, because she had a good spirit about the whole thing.
That's just awesome, man. That is so cool. What a great story. So you leave Stanford. By the way, I love Stanford. Every single time I go up to visit my son, I go out and hang out at Cobb Field and walk around the track,
It's a cool,
love
cool
that
facility.
place, man. It's one of the prettiest campuses on the planet. So you leave Stanford, you have your MBA, and you decide to go out and start. How does it start? Like, how do you start the business? Do you start calling people? What do you start doing that gets you going?
Yeah, well, that's a hell of a question that you ask. It's one I was asking myself at the time too. Because what's funny is, the business schools, certainly the kind of the pedigreed business schools, right? They all fly, I think, a little higher than I would recommend. And I teach at Stanford, I teach at Marshall, and that's something that I always, make the point of, is like, look, you put out graduates who could walk into a large company at a mid-level and start leading, and that's fine. But if you're going to build yourself as an entrepreneurial organization, you need to come down a couple levels, because the first thing you run into when you start to try to, form a business is, I need some kind of an entity, right?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Right.
How do I get pesky little things like insurance?
Right.
How do I think about renting a space?
Yeah. Hiring people.
How do I hire?
Come on. Yeah.
Payroll. None of that.
Hello.
None of that
right?
is part of the criteria, is part of the curriculum, right? None of it. It all assumes that you've already gone through all of that, and you're working in
the organization you're going to plug into already has it in place.
Right. So that was all stuff that honestly I had to learn from scratch.
Yeah.
And kind of by braille, if you will, and what I really mean is face planting, one after another. and going, ouch,
Right.
that hurts.
That hurt. That's going to leave a mark.
I'm not doing it that way again. But I honestly started the business in the only way I knew how. I was super confident in the product. I knew that it had a place. So I filled up a backpack full of straps, and I'll bet you I pitched 500 different gyms, Mike, in the first 2-3 years that I was starting TRX. And it was, I would show up, I'd sing for my supper. Basically, I'd persuade the fitness manager of a club to give me a half hour of their trainer training. They'd some of them do it monthly, some of them do it quarterly. And I'd go in and demo this thing, and I'd leave them a couple to thank them, right, for giving me the shot in front of their trainers. And every single time I'd have 1 or 2 trainers come up to me afterward and be like, hey, I'm really interested in this. How do I get involved with you? Mm-hmm. And that was how TRX was built. It was one trainer at a time. Yeah. And through those trainers, we'd reach, a guy like you, today. You might have a trainer, and the trainer would be like, hey, Mike, I got a new thing I'm going to put you on. Yeah. Right. You're going to love it. And that's how TRX was built.
Yeah. So that's the straps, right? Yeah. Now let's talk about the vans and the outfit training. I mean, this is so flippin' cool. I love what you're doing. Talk about that.
Well, so they're 2 distinctly different ventures, right? But I spent the better part. I mean, TRX is almost 20. We turned 20 this year. Yeah. And I'm the chairman of TRX. And during the first, the last 15 years, TRX certified probably close to 300,000 training pros. Yeah. And that gave me visibility into a lot of trainers' careers, right? And one of the things that I noticed was that the deck's kind of stacked against them. It's hard to make a living. It's fine in your 20s, right? But then you partner up, you have a couple kids, and you start to realize, most trainers start to realize, like, man, this is a tough way to make a living. Yeah. I can only work so many hours, and my income's capped. At a gym, you're giving a lot back to the gym because the gym has its costs. And then a lot of trainers will say, all right, I'm going to go start my own. But that, as often as not, is the beginning of the end for them, because they take their whole life savings and they put it into this brick and mortar. And then they find out that, like, the things they're really great at, which is training clients, they're doing less and less and less of, because they've got to be a marketer. They've got to be hiring and managing and, dealing with operational issues, all these things that they're not actually good at. Mm-hmm. And the one thing they're really good at, they're doing almost none of. Yeah. Right. And so I watched this, and then they end up, the punchline is that it's almost 100% attrition by 10 years in the fitness industry for good trainers. And so I was looking at that, and that had been bothering me for a while at TRX. And I thought, well, I might have an idea on how to fix that. At the same time, I'd grown up, and all through my SEAL career, training outdoors, right? Like, that's what we did. Relatively little in gym training. Yeah. And I always loved it. And as I looked across the country, there are hundreds of mom and pop boot camps out there, but there wasn't a single branded, like, reliable, high quality branded service provider in outdoor fitness. Yeah. And that bothered me, right? Because I was looking at that going, God. And so we did this about 10 years ago at TRX. We did this brand activation called TRX on Tour, where we took this van, tricked it out, customized it, filled it with our gear, and we drove it around the country for a couple of years. And it was just a brand activation. It wasn't meant to be a business, but every one of the activations we did, we had people coming up to us asking us, hey, can I buy one of these? If it was a trainer, can I work here? Can I own one of these? And the thing that was missing back in 2012 was the tech, right? The technology to make something like this scalable didn't exist. Yeah. But over the next 10 years, right, Uber comes along with geolocation. Social media pops up as an efficient, mass communication vehicle for affinity groups. Yeah. And then, the legion of services like MindBody online, like companies that let you do online registration and scheduling. And so all the tech came into being. And then of course there was that pesky little thing called COVID.
Yeah.
And we all lived through that. And I watched, I watched all of these gyms dragging stuff out into the parking lots and doing goofy, trying to stay alive.
Yeah.
It all kind of came together at a time when I was looking for a new challenge. I had sold control of TRX to some private equity guys, and I was not enjoying them, nor they me. And so I was sort of looking at, all right, I think I need to go do something different for a period. And it all kind of came together, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do another startup.
Yeah.
And so I spun Outfit out of TRX. Interestingly, those guys ended up running TRX into the rocks, and I ended up coming back with a partner and buying it back.
Wow.
And ended up with, something that I didn't anticipate, a turnaround and a startup,
Right.
Which made for an interesting the last 18 months from middle of 2022 to the end of 2022.
So you had Outfit here, right? Startup.
Yep.
You had another hand. Let's just take on a turnaround.
Yeah, right. And it's not what I recommend. I will say, if you want to run a couple businesses at the same time, where you either gotta have a balance sheet like Elon Musk's, or you got to have some really thick skin, because it was a lift, but it worked, and it worked on both sides. TRX is doing great, and somehow those guys took a couple years to sink the unsinkable ship, and in less time we got it back to profitability, and it's doing great, and that has enabled me to then shift some of my focus back over to my startup, and it's we're getting up and getting going. It's a really cool. I mean, you think of it, our members call us the Uber of fitness, right? And it really kind of is that. It's outdoor group training out in parks and parking lots, and church parking lots, beach walks, anywhere where there's a scenic environment with a parking lot that's adjacent to it. We're doing things in malls, which is interesting, right? And you think about how big malls were built back in the 70s and 80s. Well, now they're desperate for activation. Yeah. And a lot of those malls have like really nice greenery out on the periphery. So we go and work out a deal with the mall to use a little area, and we show up in the morning and in the evening and run big classes. And then we also can deliver personal training. Yeah. Obviously, each of these vans can train up to 100 people. So it's very easy to roll up to your house and train you and your wife, or, some golf buddies, or however you want to do it. So it's a pretty cool model, and it's a model that we've organized it as a franchise. It's a model that a franchisee can be into for less than $100,000, which is very rare in the fitness world, right? Yeah. There just aren't those kinds of ownership opportunities at that level of investment.
Yeah, that's true. And I can tell you that from experience. I started a Keller Williams office in 2001, and $100,000 is nothing when you're talking about opening a franchise like I did, right? Now it's a real estate franchise, but I mean, I love what you're doing so much more than what I did. And, I've been doing this for a very long time. So, so one of the things that I wanted to point out to you was, and you don't know this about me, but I got sick in 2018 and I lost 162 pounds.
Whoa.
Right. And when COVID hit, I had 2 gyms that I worked out in every day. And both of them got shut down. So I literally decided I got to do something else. Right. So I walked 136 miles in 30 days.
No kidding.
No kidding. And it was one of the best experiences. It was all outside, right? One of the best experiences of my life. Half of it was up a giant hill by where we lived at the time. And I absolutely loved every second of it. And I loved the way I felt, right? And I could have used TRX straps, right, to work out at home.
For sure.
That's why when I saw what you're doing, and especially the part with Outfit where you're doing it outside, that is dude, it's so unbelievably amazing. You have yoga classes outside, you have all these different things outside. And I love the fact that you can get a full workout outside, hooked up to a van at a park, or at a mall or whatever, right? It's just someplace outside. I love that.
Yeah, one of the things that comes out over and over in our member surveys is the convenience and the sort of inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Because being outdoors, there's something anthropological that goes on there. Being outdoors in the elements, and yeah, sometimes it rains. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Most of the time it's beautiful, and you got sun and clouds and the breeze. There's something about that is really mentally refreshing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something special to what we're doing. And the other thing is the convenience, because it's really kind of comical. If you go to an outfit class, you show up more than 2 minutes before the class starts, you'd think nobody's going to be there.
Right.
Because they've all got it optimized. Outfit tends to draw from a hyper local area, which kind of makes sense, right? You see us in your park right down the street from your house.
Right.
And so then you go, well, man, I could be from my house to the workout in
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then I work out and I'm home in 30 seconds. Right. And you contrast that to what generally is the experience if you're driving to a gym, right? You could be an hour in.
Yeah.
You could be an hour in between getting there and getting back, not counting the workout.
Right. And the parking.
And the checking in at the front desk. And so one of the great things about Outfit is all of that is run through the app.
Yeah. And
what happens is it looks like a Starsky and Hutch movie, as right before the class starts, everybody comes flying in from all different directions. We organize ourselves in parking lots. So there is parking all around.
Yeah.
People bring their kids, they bring their dogs. It's because you can have your kid sitting right over there in the car, if it's playing on an iPad or whatever, or we're family friendly. So, we love it when members will bring their kids right into the class.
Yeah.
And it's a very different experience. And we tend to draw from, we have gym folks as well, but we tend to draw from folks who aren't gym dogs.
Yeah.
We get folks that are runners and bikers, and they love to walk in the park. And it's a lot of the folks that their doctors keep telling them, like, hey, you got to have strength training in your routine, but they don't like gyms.
Right.
And so we think we're filling, and that's frankly about 80% of the population of the country, by the way, because gym membership is less than 20%.
Yeah.
So we're happy. We're not really competing with gyms. We go where the gyms aren't. I love the gyms, right? I built my whole career at TRX in partnership with the gyms. Yeah. I don't want to compete with them. I really want to complement them by being out in the neighborhoods and trying to bring people into fitness who maybe have never belonged to a gym.
Yeah.
And they see us out in their park and they go, well, that looks kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'll bet I could do that.
Yeah.
And then they come join up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Outfit is offering franchises. If somebody's interested, they go to your website.
Yeah, Outfit franchise, OutfitFranchise.com.
Outfit franchise, okay.
Yeah, Outfit Training is our consumer site. If you want to be a member of Outfit, that's where you'd go.
Okay.
OutfitFranchise.com is where you can go and learn about the opportunity to own a unit, or 3 or 6, however many is right.
That's cool.
And we've been running a corporate market for not quite 2 years in Fort Lauderdale. We just started franchising about 6 months ago. We launched our first multi-unit franchisee in Atlanta in around the end of October. And so, we're just getting up and getting rolling. But I think that kind of the combination of the low buy-in and then low operating expenses is in my view a pretty attractive opportunity, because it means that if we get you launched right, you're breaking even quickly, and then you're cash flowing, right? Which is, of course, the biggest lesson in any business, right? Get profitable as fast as possible and stay profitable.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And the best part about it is there's no brick and mortar.
No personal guarantees of leases, right? And beyond that, like, one of the things that I've watched a lot of gyms open and close. And, you're living or dying by that site selection.
Yeah, you are.
You get it a little bit wrong, and you're going to be fighting headwinds to the day you go under.
Yeah.
The great thing about outfit, you get the park wrong a little bit, you put it in drive, you drive a half mile down the road to a park with better visibility, right? Better drive-by visibility, and all of a sudden the business takes off. Yeah. So you've got a lot of flexibility in a mobile model that you don't get in a brick and mortar model. And we like that a lot as well.
Yeah, I do too. Anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, it was great talking to you. A lot of fun. We covered some terrain, and no, anybody who's interested in obviously I'm still wearing two hats. I'm the chairman of TRX, and I'm the CEO of Outfit, and both of those, I think if you're looking for something at home, TRX is an incredible brand. I think what we do is really special. We've got an amazing app that's called the TRX Training Club. So for somebody who's just interested in getting into fitness at home, should absolutely take a look at TRX, TRXtraining.com. And then, keep your eyes out for Outfit, because hopefully we'll be rolling through a neighborhood near you soon.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. Randy Hetrick, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been a blast.
And my pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
I've enjoyed it, bud. Thanks so much. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out Calendly.com/Rio760.